Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here with another poetry discussion. Today's poetry discussion was requested by Nancy. Now, you know the deal. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting that subscribe button because literature is all I do on this channel. And if you want to help me out with what I'm doing here, hitting the like button always does the job. And by the by, if you want to hear me talk about philosophy, if you want to hear me talk about movies, if you want to hear me talk about other things in general, there is a link to my personal channel in the description below. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, guys, so I would really appreciate the help. But Nancy requested this poem, and if you have any requests for other poems, be sure to let me know in the comments section because I'm doing poetry every Monday. Every Monday, we have poetry here on Strip Cover Lit. So I've got a lot of slots to fill because I don't want to just do Emily Dickinson and Charles Bukowski every week. No, don't get me wrong, I do just want to do Emily Dickinson and Charles Bukowski every week, but I don't think that's fair, right? Plus, coming up for National Poetry Month, I will have a poetry discussion every day of the month going live here on the channel. So I do have a special request from you. I want to have another day dedicated to Sylvia Plath. I've done Sylvia Plath 2 years in a row, and I don't know any more Sylvia Plath poems than the ones I've done. It's horribly embarrassing as someone who spends as much time with poetry as I do, but Sylvia Plath is someone with whom I have always struggled. So if you have any ideas on Sylvia Plath poems that I should do, leave them in the comments below because I got to get better with Sylvia Plath. So here is today's poem, Dark Pines Underwater by Gwendolyn MacEwen. So I'm going to go with a reading here, and then we'll get into the discussion portion. This land, like a mirror, turns you inward, and you become a forest in a furtive lake. The dark pines of your mind reach downward. You dream in the green of your time. Your memory is a row of sinking pines. Explorer, you tell yourself, this is not what you came for, although it is good here and green. You had meant to move with a kind of largeness. You had planned a heavy grace, an anguished dream. But the dark pines of your mind dip deeper, and you are sinking, sleeper, in an elementary world. There is something down there, and you want it told. So I've got a couple. This feels very much like a fever dream, does it not? This feels um, all of the images involved, all of the sort of language that we're given here feels very fever dream esque, very image heavy. So I want to go to a couple of other definitions here. I pulled them, by the way, from a dictionary of literary and thematic terms, Writer's Library, by Edward Quinn. It's a very helpful book, very useful. I picked portions of the definitions for both Impressionism and Imagism, and I want to go over them here. Impressionism. In Impressionist literary style, emphasis falls on the creation of a mood or atmosphere reflecting a world filtered through an individual consciousness. To some extent, this mood is created by a painterly style in an attempt to render images, reflections of light and sound, that represent the literary equivalents of Impressionist paintings. So, with Impressionism, with Impressionist literature, we are leaning very heavily on mood and image, and how an image conveys a mood. So, why do I bring this up? Imagism is as such a school of English and American poetry that flourished in the years prior to and during World War I. Now, Impressionism was a little bit before that. It started in the late 1800s, and moved through, sort of died out with World War One. Imagism, um, years prior to and during World War One. I would say the Imagism movement. Well, it tells us right here. A school of English and American poetry that flourished in the years prior to and during World War One. The school originated at a meeting in London, in a London restaurant, of poets Ezra Pound, T.E. Home, and F.S. Flint that resulted in the formation of the Principles, published in 1913. So probably this meeting, I don't know. To me, this is just lore. I don't know of the meeting. I don't know the restaurant where it took place. I don't know the year that it happened. But if they were published in 1913, we're probably looking at 1910, right? So 1910s-ish through World War I. The Imagist Creed enunciated three poetic goals. One, to treat the thing directly, whether subjective or objective. Two, to use absolutely no word that did not contribute to presentation. And three, as regarding to rhythm, to compose in sequence of the musical phrase, not in sequence of the metronome. Now, a lot of this has the sort of try hard largesse that we often associate with Ezra Pound. But to illustrate what this is, we have here a poem from Ezra Pound in a station of the metro, from Ezra Pound. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bow. It's the whole poem. Now, Imagism was Ezra Pound, very heavily influenced by haiku, by Japanese writing. That part not necessarily so much is what we're going that's not necessarily so much what we're going to be looking at with the poem from MacEwen. But when you think Impressionist style, when you think of this mood heavy writing where the images are meant to lead us, and Imagism, which is I'm going to argue that Imagism sort of left this original mindset. Most of the imagistic sort of poems that you get after post Pound are a little less focused than was Pound. The images themselves were meant to lend the reader basically impressions. Now, it is not coincidence that Impressionism led right into Imagism. So I want you to sort of keep these things in mind while we read this poem again. This land, like a mirror, turns you inward, and you become a forest in a furtive lake. The dark pines of your mind reach downward. You dream in the green of your time. Your memory is a row of sinking pines. Explorer, you tell yourself, this is not what you came for, although it is good here and green. You had meant to move with a kind of largeness. You had planned a heavy grace, an anguished dream. But the dark pines of your mind dip deeper, and you are sinking, sleeper, in an elementary world. There is something down there, and you want it told. Dark pines underwater. The water feels like a reference to the subconscious, and that is not all that big a stretch. After all, I don't remember if this was Freud himself explaining the struggle between the conscious and the unconscious mind, or if this was the way other people described this. But one way that we are told to think about the conscious versus the unconscious is as such. Consciousness, the conscious mind, is like a person bobbing around in the ocean during a storm. The subconscious is a person floating underneath the water trying to drown them. So, in the conscious mind, we have all these things attacking us, and we try to focus, we try to focus, we try to focus. But in the back of our minds, you really are kind of hungry. Man, you probably shouldn't have drank that last night. Oh, hey, look at her. All of these things going through our unconscious mind or our subconscious mind. Whereas the conscious mind is bobbing along, trying desperately to focus on one thing after another, one thing that we're supposed to focus on, while the subconscious is trying to drag us underwater. So I don't think that the Dark Pines underwater, the underwater part, is a big stretch to say is to do with with the subconscious. Okay, so we've got the water. But what are these pines? Well, we're going very much with moods here, aren't we? And darkness is very rarely something pure, very rarely something inviting, very rarely something positive, very rarely something safe. All of these things we have working against the darkness, but it's not darkness, they're dark pines. The darkness is connected to the pines. So what are we doing here? What are we actually doing here? The dark seems bad, but pines, the interesting thing about pines is they're evergreens, right? Being that they're evergreens, what we're looking at here is these dark pines, the negative evergreens, the bad thoughts dig deep into that water. The dark pines of your mind reach downward. You dream in the green of your time. Your memory is a row of sinking pines. It seems to me that what we're doing here, what we're really exploring, is the evergreen nature of those negative thoughts. The evergreen nature of those bad things that we know about ourselves. Because, let's face it, none of us are perfect. But here's the real interesting part. All the bad stuff you've done, you've been there for that. All the negative stuff, all the stupid stuff, all the times you've let yourself down, all the goals you didn't follow through, you were there for that. You weren't there for anyone else's negativity in that way. You were not there for anyone else's failures. Not all of them. Not every single one. But you were there for your own. And I think that ultimately what this poem is about. But the dark pines of your mind dipped deeper, and you were sinking, sleeper, in an elementary world. There is something down there, and you want it told. There is a cathartic nature in admission. There is a cathartic nature to coming clean. There is a cathartic nature to putting negative things out there just to have them out there. I think that is what these dark pines are about. Those dark pines are evergreen, and they burrow deeper and deeper into that subconsciousness. They will always be there. And there is something down there, and you want it told. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. again, I hope to have you back for the next one. Every Monday, we're going to have poems on this channel, except for National Poetry Month, because during National Poetry Month, we're going to have poems every day of the month. So, again, if you have any Sylvia Plath poems you think I should look at, especially if they're Sylvia Plath poems that I have not already done, I would appreciate hearing from you about them. I'm going to have a day for Sylvia Plath, a day for Emily Dickinson, a day for Charles Bukowski, a day for, um, oh, what is his name? Crotchety old man, Robert Frost. I'll have a day for Robert Frost. I don't know what else I'm going to do. I'm not going to do the trench poets again because I enjoy the trench poets. No one else does. And while this channel is mainly for me, I mean, I have to be here all the time. Um, it's nice to have interaction a little bit, and nobody watches those trench poet videos. So, again, that is all I have for this poetry discussion. I hope to have you back for the next one. Also, we're going through Fairy Tale by Stephen King on Thursdays on the channel, and towards the end of March, I've got a very special project that I just finished. Um, Maybe not very special, very interesting, extremely interesting, that I hope to make part of a larger sort of series here. But, best laid plans of mice and men. Hit the like button if you like what I'm doing here. Hit the subscribe button if you were here by chance but not design. And come back next Monday. Why? You know why.